Welcome to the Raising Values podcast, where the traditional family talks. You can find us on iTunes, Stitcher, and Spotify, and be sure to follow us on Facebook and Instagram. You can support the Raising Values podcast through Patreon. Phil and Gillian are behind the mic, and we hope you enjoy the show.
Welcome to the Raising Values podcast. I'm Phil.
I'm Gillian, and I'm just going to start off by saying we're going to screw this name up so bad. We've been saying Matter of Values, Raising Canes came out. Maybe I was hungry, but it's Raising Values. So welcome to the Raising Values podcast. This is something that Phil and I have been wanting to do for quite some time, and we're super excited to finally get down to it and really get this podcast going. I think it's going to be really helpful for a lot of people out there, and it'll be sort of a therapy session for me and maybe for both of us. Something that we've always believed in is therapy. So Phil was supposed to do the intro and for some reason I'm so nervous, even though I've already been on so many episodes of the Matter of Facts podcast. Phil's just stop talking, Gillian.
Oh, no, I'm going to let her roll, because right before this, she was chastising me quite thoroughly about how I couldn't sit here and quietly let her carry the whole show. And I was like, honey, it's going to be okay. We got this. And then here she goes.
Yeah, I mean, it's something that I want. This isn't just my podcast. This is Phil and I's podcast. Don't worry, Andrew is still in the picture. We haven't outed him. So they are still going to be doing their Matter of Facts podcast every week. Sometimes they record twice a week. Andrew's still a major part of this. So so thank you all for tuning in so far. We are so excited about it. What else? What else do we do?
Well, like Gillian said, the Matter of Facts podcast isn't going anywhere. What Raising Values really is a chance for the two of us to bring in a different line of content that, like Gillian and I have spoken about several times on the Matter of Facts podcast. And every time that happened, it was almost more of it was an offshoot. And we got tremendous response from it. A lot of people wanted to hear more about our values as far as parents, our ideas about marriage and about relationships. And we figured it was time to kind of formalize that, make a formal effort out of it. And that's what Raising Values is. So Raising Values and Matter of Facts are going to run in tandem on the same YouTube channel. If you're listening to this in audio on the podcast, it's going to run on the same RSS feed, which means if you're subscribed to one, you get them both, like it or not. There's not a lot of separating Matter of Facts or Raising Values, because while Matter of Facts is always focused on physical threats and focused on prepping and survivalism and self-reliance and things of that nature, how to protect ourselves from physical harm, I see Raising Values as tackling things that are also a potential harm to the family unit, but they come from different directions. It's things like, how do we counter the fact that the divorce rate is through the ceiling? How do we guard our children against all the influences that are being thrown at them these days? How do we make sure that the family is tightly knit enough and emotionally connected enough and close enough to be able to survive in today's world?
Yeah, we've talked often, and like Phil said, the episodes that I'm on for the Matter of Facts podcast often steer towards a different perspective for prepping. And it is something that we totally agree with in, yes, you need your rice and your beans and your everything else. And Phil has always looked for me as the emotional support, that side of prepping for our family. And there's just so much there that we can expound upon. And so while we are still underneath the Matter of Facts banner, I think you're going to get a different feel for this podcast. And like I said, we're really excited. And I think a lot of people out there could hear the stories and the experiences we've gone through. For instance, when I made the post announcing who we were and things like that, I certainly don't want anyone to tune into the podcast and think we're experts, because we're not. We are drawing on our experiences and what we've gone through together as a couple.
But tomorrow makes 15 years.
Yeah, so that I was getting there. 15 years tomorrow. We've been together for 18 years. And we have literally we've literally experienced and gone through each one of our vows, I feel like, that we took on our wedding day 15 years ago tomorrow. So it's super important to us. I think my own personal life growing up is I could write a book and probably make millions. And Phil has some interesting things that he's gone through. And then we're just going to combine that with what we've done as a couple. And there have not always been easy times. And there certainly hasn't been, it hasn't always been peaches and whatever. There's been some struggle. And I think we are better for having gone through all of that. And those are just some of the things that we'll talk about. And as I said, if you saw my post this morning on the Raising Values podcast feed, we're never going to run out of content. We were getting on the interstate to go to a crawfish boil yesterday, and we talked almost through Hammond about different things that are going on in the world today. And it's just, it's something that it's never going to go away. So a lot of the content that you'll see on this podcast is going to be what's facing families today, what's facing kids today, what's facing couples today, and maybe what's happening out in the world and things like that, and how we are reacting. And I certainly don't want you to ever take what we say as written in stone. We definitely want you to do what's best for your family, and hopefully you can get something out of what we have to talk about.
Yeah. I think there's also going to be a lot of conversations around, like, I don't want to use the word philosophy, but there's no other way to put it. Like we have
philosophy.
I wasn't going to go there, but like we have very specific, some people would say very traditional, very Christian rooted values that we've arranged our marriage and our child rearing and our lives around. And a lot of those are like really high minded ideals about like the sanctity of marriage and about marriage being a permanent fixture. Like it's, when we got married, unlike, quite frankly, a lot of our peers, a lot of our friends who their marriages have not survived 15 years, but we went into this really with the idea that like, we have thought this over. We've considered this very hard. We're both comfortable with the fact that beyond just loving each other, but like we were compatible enough in our ideas and our wants and our goals that we were going to be able to make a union work long term. So, I mean, like we didn't enter into marriage. It wasn't like we met in Vegas, woke up the next morning married. And very similarly with starting a family, like we didn't have Piper by accident. That was a very conscious, intentional choice of, we want to start a family. We agree on enough of parenting and enough of like how we want to raise Piper that we'll work out the details in the mix. But it's a lot of those things that like I see that we've done very differently from most other parents and most other couples. Mm-hmm. And I just want to interject, like, even though Gillian and I agree on a lot of things, we're not going to agree on everything. Like we
don't. We had a discussion the other night about, when does Piper get her first cell phone? And we have always disagreed. But I can tell you that over the last 18 years, really, our arguments are different. We're not so much at each other's throat trying to hurt each other because the other person is hurt. We're more trying to watch our tone, right? We're watching our tone.
I use the same tone I always do.
And what we say, and making sure that we're not misleading each other in what we're trying to come to a common goal of achieving.
Yeah, because I mean, whether we agree or not agree, our goals are the same at the end of the day. But I mean, like we were even disagreeing about like the nature of love yesterday. Like
Yeah, we did.
I mean, but it's a philosophical question. Like I told you yesterday, like to me, love it's a decision. Like it's a
Mhm.
conscious thing. Loving a person is really easy in the honeymoon phase. It's really easy when they're pretty and cute and they smell nice and they're in the peak of their health. But when that person's like lying in a hospital bed, or when they've lost their mind, or when things are really, really, really bad, it's hard to love that person. And that's why I say love is a choice. Love is a conscious, intentional choice. Like I choose to love this person even when they are unlovable.
Yeah. And my point of view, which I don't agree with you. I mean, I don't disagree with you that love is a choice. I have to think of how I feel when I think of you. So love is also emotional, and it's also hormonal, and it's sending different endorphins and oxytocin and everything else throughout your body. So there is a chemical response to love. And that's what I was trying to get across was it's not just I walk through that door and every day go, I have to love Phil today. Or I wake up in the morning and go, I have to love Phil today. And it's not it. That's not how it works. It's just not how it works.
So is now also the time to say that like we are very, very different in personality. Like the whole left brain, right brain argument. I'm very regimented, very what's a polite way of saying mechanical? Like I'm very rational, and I think things through, and if things like my emotions are very often expressed in the guise of I've already unpacked it, compartmentalized it, arranged it, and now I'm going to express it to you, as opposed to a very spontaneous expression of emotion, which I don't do well.
I think our friends and family who
are laughing hysterically right now.
Who are watching this and commenting and making such sweet, sweet comments on the feed know that we're totally opposite. And I think that's why we work so well is because you keep me grounded when otherwise I'd probably float off and be like, oh, I'm just going to quit my job today because I'd rather go frolic through the flowers and we can do all sorts of crafts and let me call my friends because glitter is going to be involved. See, glitter.
I think that comment right there pretty well sums it all up. Phil
Yeah.
is duct tape and Gillian is glitter and sunshine.
But you need those two things. Kendra, thank you so much.
I'm gonna put we gotta put that on a t-shirt.
It's something that's a mug or something. Yeah, Phil is definitely duct tape and I am definitely glitter and sunshine. Phil likes to call me a complicated I'm a houseplant with complicated emotions.
That's it.
That's what I am. Just give me the sun, a good book, and if I'm cranky, just stay away and throw some tacos at me. That'll shut her up.
Can I put that on a t-shirt too?
Yeah, just throw tacos at her. Tacos, that'll shut her up. It used to be
tacos,
diamonds.
That'll shut her up.
Yes. So I think they know that, but if we ever get some new listeners on here, they'll definitely see that we don't agree on everything. And I am kind of a fly by the seat of your pants kind of person. If something pops up or pops off or whatever, it's okay. Let's evaluate the situation and go from there. And a lot of times for Phil, like for vacations and things, and even this podcast, it was, have you thought about what time you wanted to do your episode? Have you thought about what time you want to do the episode? And I hadn't, and I wasn't going to. I had other things. I had to bake something. I had to get Piper done for school. There was things we had to do. So I hadn't thought about it.
I had a checklist of stuff that we had to get done before our first stream.
Yeah. And I was just like, well, 6:00 on Monday. That sounds good. Mondays aren't so tough for me at work. And then, we're both off at the same time during the day. So yeah, Monday is what it was. But it took me a few days to process when we were actually going to do this. And why, again, I'm so nervous. I have no idea.
She was in panic mode about.
I have no idea. It's hilarious.
5 minutes before I hit the button, she's sitting here tapping her foot and her knees bouncing up and down. And I'm just looking at her like, you've been on the Matter of Facts podcast how many times? Just calm down.
God, so many times. I don't know. I think it's exciting. I'm excited. This is something that I've wanted to do. I've talked to Phil and Andrew about a couple of times about doing it. And then it just seems like getting this podcast going and wanting to help out the Matter of Facts brand, basically. But then it got the ball rolling on some other things. And it, my friends and I we're going to start our own podcast, and it's going to be just the girls, not prepper related or anything like that. In fact, I think my other friend is going to head that up, but we'll all be little guest hosts on this other podcast. So there may be more about that coming up, but that's a little bit down the road, I think. But anyway, raising values, not raising canes, and not matter of values. We'll all have to get the wording right. There was a big debate on what we should call it. Eventually got to where I told Stuart, I said, you're going to watch it and you're going to like it no matter what the name is. So raising values, we went back and forth on that, on the name. A lot of times, because you don't want to name something that's already out there. It's easier to find if it's not named in another podcast or another whatever. And so I was just sitting at my desk and it popped up, raising values. We knew we wanted to talk about our traditional values, like Phil said. I don't want to skirt along the fact that we're Christian and that our Christianity leads heavily into how we lead this household. We are traditional in the fact that Phil is the head of the household, and I am I am the neck. I turn the head, but he is the head of the household. And I think we're going to run into some, especially in today's time and what people think and the woke culture that is out there. I'm already ready for the type of hate comments that we'll get and the different things that y'all get on the Matter of Facts podcast, the different awful things that people come on there and comment or message you and say, when you make a comment, they comment back. And I'm prepared for that. I think it's worth getting traditional values back into mainstream. And I certainly don't want anyone to think that because we are traditional Christian family that we only want traditional Christian people watching or listening to this podcast, because that is not at all what we want. We just want to use this as a platform to help others. And I think a lot of the things that we've been through, and as a family and personally, will help other people. I think everyone needs to see that people go through the same things, and that your trauma or your experiences in life, you're not alone in, and other people have battled those same things and they've woken up the next day and won it. And so this is how we did that. This is how we've gotten through those things. And in the grand scheme of everything, 18 years together and 15 years married is not long. But in today's age, 15 years married is a long time. And
I mean, compared to the rest of our generation, and for illustrative purposes, most of the people listening today are probably friends and family. But for the people that aren't, I mean, I was born 1982. You were born 1984. We are like right on the edge of being millennials. And compared to the rest of our generation, 15 years is about 3 times longer than the average marriage lasts these days. I mean, it's disheartening to know that, but yeah, I mean, 15 years for 2 people that are 39 and 40 years old, that's a lifetime.
Yeah. So
it seems odd considering that, like, we know people who've been married like 40 and 50 years, but still.
Yeah. So that's us. That's what we're doing with this podcast. We did promise the Matter of Facts listeners the last time I was on, which was probably
few weeks,
2 or 3 weeks ago, that our next episode together would be a parenting episode. And that's something that we're always ready to talk about. Now we've shooed off our daughter for this because, as you can see, the background, if you're familiar with the Matter of Facts podcast, the background is different. There's not a gun in the back. There's not a whole bunch of prepping and camping gear behind us. Actually, there's 2 beautiful drawings that our daughter did that she absolutely hates that are hanging in this house, but they will never go away. And we're in our dining room, which I think is a much more pleasant area to host this podcast. But no, she will not get behind the mic. We've asked her 1,000 times. People want to know Piper's experiences growing up in a household of preppers and people who are survivalists and things like that. And she refuses to get behind the mic. You will probably never see her face. And that's because we want to make sure that she's comfortable. We're never going to force her to do that. We also, this is very public from our personal Facebook profiles and Instagram profiles that are heavily locked down. And so we don't really want to have her have such a big presence just because she is only 10 years old. So if she's decided that this is not something she wants to pursue, then we're definitely not going to make her. So she's probably either hopefully doing her homework or playing Minecraft in her bedroom.
Equal opportunity on that.
Right. We'll see what homework is done once we're done with this podcast today.
Oh, it'll get done as soon as we get done streaming one way or the other.
Yeah, we will. It'll get done. There is homework, so my friend who's watching that's in the same class, there's homework tonight.
Yeah.
Let's see. There are quite a few comments. My favorite one right now is, yes, I think tacos shuts everyone up. We had tacos for dinner. So we sat down, we came through, and it was like 4:00, and Piper said, she said, she's right there. Shh. She came through and she said, when are you cooking dinner? And I said, are you hungry? And she said, yes. So we had tacos tonight. Tacos always shut me up. So just give me tacos. Let's see what else was up there. Go up through those comments. Y'all, wait, go down. So full, like the opposite of me and my wife. She has a list for everything. Yeah. No, I'm the type of person who Piper says hi. Do you want to say hi? Oh my gosh, this is a rare
Hi.
I've been podcasting for 6 years. She won't show her face on mine.
There we go. It's a family affair over here, huh?
That's another podcast.
So, sorry. This is raising values. Anyway, I don't remember what I was saying now. Oh, I'm the type of person that has to, we call it putting it in your cart. So you put it in your cart and you walk around and then you make the decision on whether or not you want it or not. Do you really need this kind of thing? So we use that figuratively and proverbially. Is that the word? We use that. Put it in your cart and think about it.
Figuratively.
Figuratively.
But in the clothing store, that is literal. She'll literally put stuff in her cart and go in a big circuit around the little store. And then she'll either put it back where she got it or she'll actually check out with it.
Yeah, but I do that for a lot of things. And that's, sometimes it's how do I respond to this text or.
Did you do that with me?
Yeah. I did do that with you. I guess we could go into that because we kind of did in the first intro post on the Facebook page and Instagram was a little bit about your host. And the story is that my cousin and I lived in the dorms at college. And our sophomore years, we decided it was time to leave the dorms and we were going to go get an apartment. So we moved into this college apartment. It was disgusting. And a couple of months later, a friend of Phil's moved in 2 doors down. And we instantly hit it off and we became really good friends. Well, I walk into her apartment one day and she's got this picture of this soldier hanging on her fridge.
I should have had that picture queued up for the audience.
I didn't know we were going to talk about it, but he is laying on top of a Black Hawk. I didn't know the story at the time, but I knew he was this cute soldier, tan skin, whatever. He was in his camo, all that stuff. He just looks so good. And I said, oh, he's really cute. And she said, well, you're going to have to wait because he's in Iraq. And I was like, yeah, right. I'm not waiting to be some number in a black book so that when he gets home, he can just call all these girls or whatever. No, thank you. Well, I hadn't given it another thought. And his friend had ended up emailing him and saying, hey, I have this neighbor. She thought your picture was cute, so on and so forth. And I get this email because y'all, you have to remember, okay, like 18 years ago,
This is 2004.
we're still using Nokias. All right. We're not quite to flip phones yet. So this was a long time ago. And I get this email from this guy. Oh my God. And I read it and I didn't respond. And I was just like, do I really want to talk to him? Whatever. I'll email him back. So a couple of days went by, I email him back. Well, this persistent little butt over here decides, well, I'm going to email her back. And not only that, I'm going to see when she's on Yahoo Messenger and we're going to talk that
It
way.
was AOL Instant Messenger at first.
Oh,
Yahoo Messenger was later.
Either way, it was a messenger that I don't even think people use anymore. It's like
anymore.
It was like one of those chat room kind of things. ASL. Do you remember that? ASL. Male. How old were you? 21, Iraq. That's what it would have been. Anyway, so long story short, we start messaging each other, and this goes on for 4 months. I go home for Thanksgiving. I have printed out a picture. This is so ridiculous. I have printed out a picture of Phil. He is in one of his VDUs in the airport. So cute. And I go home and I tell my sisters, I'm going to marry this guy. And they're like, whatever, you are ridiculous.
She still had not laid
oh my
physical
gosh.
eyeballs upon my
I've
physical
never met
presence
him.
yet.
I had only talked to him on Messenger. But I was going to marry him, and I told my sisters this. And in true sister fashion, I see my sisters watching. They rolled their eyes. They laughed at me. They probably made fun of me pretty heavy. And I didn't care. I was going to marry this guy. So I told my dad, Dad, this is who I'm going to marry. And I showed him the picture. All right. Whatever, honey, whatever you say. Well, then I turned 21 in January and you came home in February. And I was at work. I was a student worker at the facilities planning, which is the architecture of school. And it's a Friday, and I usually got off early on Fridays, but my boss turned around because our desks were back to back to each other. My boss turns around and says, I need you to stay late today. I have a couple of projects and some filing that needs to be done. So of course, sophomore in college is going, it is Friday night and you want me to stay at work? Like, no. Anyway, I stayed, but then I get this call from my cousin who is my roommate, and she is so sick. She's so sick. She's got a fever. She's nauseous. She's just so sick. Could you please run across town to get crackers and Gatorade? And I said, I'm not running clear across town to Walmart to get crackers and Gatorade. I'll stop at the gas station. No, you have to go to Walmart. They only sell this flavor of whatever. I'm not going to Walmart. So my boss kept me just a little bit later than I wanted to. And I get home and I didn't know what was going on. Anyway, so I get back to the apartment. I go upstairs and I check on my cousin, and she's burning up. She's green. Like, she just looks so bad. And so I'm like on the verge of calling my aunt to tell her, hey, she's not feeling good. She's really sick. And I go downstairs and there's a knock at the door, and it's Amanda. It's our neighbor, his friend. And she says, come over. I want to show you. It's so stupid. I want to show you my closet. Rearranged my closet. And I was like, okay.
This was better than a Laurel and Hardy skit when I finally heard the whole story. Because I at the time all this is going on, I had gone back to New Orleans to my unit. I got final release from there. So I was like officially off active duty and able to, go about my business for the first time in a bit over a year. my parents had picked me up in New Orleans. They brought me back to Slidell. I very, very quickly changed clothes, jumped in my car, and was screaming towards Hammond. And that's what's going on with me when all this is going on.
So I go in and I look in her closet, and it's great. I mean, it looks amazing. She's done an amazing job rearranging her little bitty closet. And I walk out of her bedroom. She goes, "Would you like a glass of water or anything?" And I was like, "I literally live 2 doors down. I don't need a glass of water. I need to go and clean the apartment because this Phil is coming home tomorrow and I don't want him to see us that we live in a pigsty." I literally walk out her door and this loud ass car is pulling into the parking lot. And I was like, "Who is this guy?" And he keeps coming. He keeps coming down because we live at the very end of the road. And he gets out. And I forgot how to breathe. Like I forgot how to speak. And my hands immediately go up to my mouth. And I'm like, "Oh my God, this has all been an elaborate, like my boss was in on it, my cousin, my neighbor, everyone is in on it." I mean, there's more people that were involved to make sure. I think your parents may have been involved in it at some point. It's somehow. Anyway, my cousin comes downstairs at that time and she said, "I have been spinning in my computer chair for hours. And right before you got home, I took the hot rag off my face." And so, I mean, it was just like this elaborate story of how do we get Gillian and Gillian and Phil to meet for the first time. And he wanted it to be a surprise. Well, it was a surprise. My house was a mess. It looked disgusting, although you weren't paying much attention to my house. And that was it. Like he said, pack a bag because I was going to stay at his parents' house for the weekend. And I didn't have time to think of anything. I just remember thinking, "You all suck. You made me stay late at work. I had to file papers. Kate was sick. I just knew she was dying. And then Amanda wants to give me water when I live 2 doors down." So anyway, that was how we met. And then here we are 18 years later. I held true to what I said to my sisters and to my dad that I was going to marry this guy. And I did. A year later, we were engaged. And then 2 years after that, we were married. And then 4 years after that, we had Piper. And that's it. So we knew Piper one and only. And that was who was going to complete our little family. And anyway, a lot has happened between then. So that's what this podcast is about. We're going to tell you all about the things that we've gone through.
Yeah.
So
a couple of things that I don't think they relate to the story, but the story made me think of them. But like when Amanda first introduced me to you gave off very strong leave me alone vibes. Like
I'm telling you, I did not want to be. Okay, think about it. Well, this is how I thought about it. This man has been in Iraq for, at that point, 6 months, because this was after you had come home for leave. You had been in Iraq for 6 months, and I did not want to be in that line that I presumed was going to happen because you hadn't been home to be with other.
So what I'm
females.
Hearing is you immediately assumed I was like every other boy you'd ever met.
Yeah, of course. Why would I have any different idea of what you were going to be?
And then if not for Amanda's persuading me that you were not what I thought you were initially, because I had dated a string of young girls who...
That doesn't sound good.
Okay. Well, but I'm 40 now. So looking back on them being like, 18, 19, 20, I dated a string of girls who were very mature, who were not looking for a long-term relationship like I had been. Like I there were a lot of years that I was like looking for who was going to be Mrs. Rapley eventually. And most of those relationships lasted 1 to 2 weeks max, because that was how long it took me to figure out, okay, you're trying to play games, manipulate, gaslight me. I'm not into any of that. Goodbye. put you on the shelf with all the rest of the failed experiments. And when I first started talking to you, you made it very clear to me you wanted nothing to do with me. And it was Amanda that said, just give her a chance. And I was like, okay. I will accept the fact that what I'm getting from her right now is probably not who she really is. I'll persist. And boy, did I persist. And then eventually I cracked the egg, the tough shell, and started to realize there was a really cool woman behind it.
Well, at that point, it had been over a year, but I had like sworn off relationships. It had been over a year that I had been in a relationship. I didn't want to get into a relationship that was going to end how every other relationship had ended for me, whether I was being cheated on or there was just no commitment or I was getting the runaround. There was probably only one other relationship that I had been in, and that was in high school, that there was no cheating, no runaround, there was a commitment. And we were 16, 17 years old. So 15, 16, 17, but you're in high school. So not to say that you can't have those relationships in high school. I mean, my twin sister's been married to her high school sweetheart since they were 17, or she was 17, he was 18, 19. Anyway, she got married at 17 and they've just had their
22 years,
20th, their 21st, I think their 20th anniversary. They got married in 2003. They got married in 2002. No, I can't remember.
You do know it's 2023 now, right?
They got married in 2001.
Pretty sure. It's been a long time.
Anyway. So yeah, so it had been over a year that I had like sworn off relationships. I wasn't about to get into another one. And I certainly was not about to get into a relationship with a man who had not been home in 6 months. And there was no telling what he was wanting to get into when he got here. And it wasn't going to be me. Make sense?
Makes perfect sense.
Okay.
I just felt horribly misjudged.
I was horribly misjudged. You told me I was a prude.
You literally.
Oh no.
Okay. You literally wanted me to like go away and leave you alone.
I did.
Okay. So I don't.
But I'm glad you were persistent.
So I don't think I misjudged your intentions. I judged them pretty accurately. I just didn't listen.
I am glad that you were persistent. At the time, I just thought it was just like, ugh, leave me alone, dude.
But all that being the case, no. But like I said, when the two of us met, I don't feel like we quote unquote casually dated. Like we both fell. By the time the two of us met face to face, we had enough conversations around what we wanted and what we were looking for out of life that we both understood that we had a very complementary view of marriage. There was every expectation that if we got married, this is it. Mm-hmm. Like we're going to make this work one way or the other. We both wanted children, which was a big departure for me because like prior to meeting you, I'd given up on the idea of ever getting married, ever having kids, ever. Like I said, I mean, I had enough failed dating experiences that I pretty much had written off ever getting married or having kids. And then I met you and I was like, oh, okay, maybe there's one. I'll give this a whirl. But I feel like we entered into this relationship in a way that is very atypical for modern times. Like a lot of people, they date casually. They do lots of things more casually than I think they should. And the two of us entered into this really with the intention of like, we're entering into this with every expectation that this is going to lead to an engagement, a marriage, a family, children. You know what I'm saying? Like, and I've been very frank about the fact that when I asked you to marry me, I had a very lengthy conversation in my head before I asked about, is this the woman who I want to raise my kids? And that was just, it sounds silly to say that, but like, if the answer would have been no, we wouldn't have gotten married, because to me, that's something that's missing from most men's headspace space is a serious conversation with themselves about, before I lay down with this woman, is this who I want to raise my kids? If the answer is no, you probably need to slam on the brakes, do a U-turn and go look somewhere else. But I don't think a lot of people will think about that. And a lot of women don't think about it either, about, is this the dude I want to be my baby daddy?
Yeah, I I told you this a couple of days ago, and I think I had told you years and years ago. I had a teacher in high school. She was our English teacher. And I will never forget, we were I think we were seniors, and we were working on the yearbook. And for some reason, this conversation had come up where she looked at all the girls, because it was just girls in the classroom, and she said, before you go to bed with a guy, a boy or man, whatever, you have to think, do I want to spend the rest of my life with him? Because whether you're married to him or not, things can happen, and you're going to have a relationship with him one way or another for the rest of your life. And that stuck. Like, I can still remember, I can hear her voice saying that. And so that stuck for me. And now I was very stupid in college and in high school and made some very poor decisions. But even then, I was still hearing her voice in the back of my head going, if you get stuck with this guy for the rest of your life, is that who you want to be with or have to work with for the rest of your life? And in every case, it was no. So stupid decisions that some are regretful, but here we are.
Live and learn.
Yeah. So
Nina asked if I asked her father's permission. I did, and he almost killed
that's
me.
Another story. He did. He almost killed my father. Almost killed him when he asked
accidentally, supposedly.
when he asked for permission. So it goes back to Nina. It goes back to, we were both raised in traditional households as well. And it was a requirement for me. I knew I wanted to marry Phil. I told my dad at Thanksgiving, before I had even met this man in person, that I wanted to marry him. But Phil was not going to ask me to marry him before he had talked to my father. It was just, and Phil knew that. And I had told him, you have to talk to my father first. So if you want to tell that enlightening story of how my father almost killed you that day.
I'll abbreviate it, because he and I had to run an errand while I was up there with the family for Christmas, which was also the scene of my first meeting of the House family. We'll probably tell that someday.
Oh yeah, I mean, I'm telling you guys, I could write a book and make millions of dollars.
But in any case, he had to go run. He had to go run to the office to pick something up. I somehow conned myself into a ride with him, and while we're on the interstate in the truck, I asked him, I'm like, so I would like to propose to your daughter, and we started talking about it. I don't remember if it was at that moment or some other time. He asked me, he's like, so if I would have said no, what would you have done? And I was like, well, I'd really rather have your blessing, but I'm going to marry the woman anyway. Like, just being honest with you, if you say no, you're just not going to be at the wedding, I guess, because this is happening. But I wonder if that's why he tried to kill me. But anyway, we were in the truck, we were driving, and the traffic in front of us came to a very aggressive hard stop on the interstate. And just, cool as a cucumber, like a man that's been to Iraq and been through Hurricane Katrina, post-Katrina New Orleans, I just point out the window to say, sir, they're stopped. And we are like barreling down on stopped cars at 70 miles an hour. And he dad barred me and slammed on the brakes. We almost hit the car in front of us. The truck behind us almost hit us. And then when we get stopped and our heart rates come back down to double digits, he looks at me, he's like, we probably should not tell the women about this because they will be upset. And I was like, I agree with you. We should not tell the women about this. Will this be between son-in-law and future soon-to-be father-in-law? And then what happens? We get in the door, and the first thing he does is start blabbing and bragging about what happened. He's like, he was cool as a cucumber. He didn't even get all excited. I'm looking at him like, I thought this was going to stay between us. Because now I've got my eventual mother-in-law hollering at him about almost killing me. I've got her worrying over me like I'm missing a limb or something, even though I'm standing in front of her perfectly fine. He's telling everybody that I'm No, he hadn't. He didn't tell everybody I was popping the question.
No, he didn't spoil it.
But he spoiled the other surprise. I was like, we're supposed to keep that quiet.
Yeah, we haven't let him live that down yet. Every now and then we still bring it up that when Phil we'll ask him the question, he almost killed him. So it's just a joke in our family now.
I don't think I've ridden in a vehicle with him many times since then.
I sure as hell wouldn't. I mean, your introduction to the family, I mean, you're already nervous. And then all of a sudden your father, a future father-in-law almost kills you.
Then my two brother-in-laws brought me out into the woods with guns.
Yeah, they had to get you familiar with the family.
Yeah. So yeah, that was at the time Phoebe's now ex-husband, thankfully, and Micah, my other brother-in-law, and they conned me into going out into the woods to go have boy bonding time with them. So I brought my 1911, and they brought a couple of guns, and we just went out there. I think it was actually your father's
hunting lease.
Yeah, the hunting lease. We went out there and put some targets up. We shot. We goofed around. Well, the very first thing I did was I popped the magazine out of my 1911 that was full of hollow points for home, for personal defense. I stuck it in my back pocket. So I was loading up just cheap Remington UMC the whole time. Well, these two were like, hey, can I shoot that? I'm like, yeah, sure, have it. And I took whatever they had because I'm not going to be out in the woods with two strange men without a gun in my hands because, I got some common sense about me. So they believe they have shot me totally out of 45 ACP. And we're walking back to the trucks, and then one of them looks at the other and says, you got the rope? And I look at one, I look at the other. I quickly assess the situation that I don't think either one of them is joking. I reach in my back pocket, grab the hot magazine, slap into the gun. I'm like, so who's got the rope? And they look at each other like, I thought he was out of ammo. So they brought me back home and said, he's family.
Yeah. So, yeah, that's us. That's what we did. We've got a lot of stories we could tell. A lot of fun.
There are a lot of stories.
Things. And you're going to hear a lot of those on this podcast. So
maybe an argument or two.
I'm sure you will hear disagreements. Definitely disagreements on here. Because we disagree when I'm on your podcast. You and Andrew's podcast.
And I'm always right if you would just listen to me.
Mm-hmm. First disagreement we're going to have on this podcast is that Phil is always right. Yep. Okay. Anyway, well, we intend for our episodes to go between 45 minutes to an hour. I can't promise that Phil will not have Phil rants, as they're called on the Matter of Facts podcast. Because I'm sure that we're going to discuss some things current in today's culture and in today's world that just sets him off, and it's okay. I think there are things that you should be fired up for. So I can't promise that he won't have Phil rants, but if you don't know what I'm talking about, I do suggest you go over to the Matter of Facts podcast page and really just follow them. They are out every Friday. They're out every Friday. We're also going to be a part. So this podcast, Raising Values, and of course, Matter of Facts, is part of the Prepper Broadcasting Network. Awesome podcasts that go out daily on that network. And we're so glad that James with the Prepper Broadcasting Network was excited to have the Raising Values podcast on that network as well. So we've come into a whole big family. Matter of Facts has been on there for quite some time, and we got to spend a lot of time with the other the hosts as part of that network during Prepper Camp last year. And it was very much like a family reunion, even though I had never met any of those people, except for like one or two, because they were part of the Matter of Facts family. But it's a great network of podcasts, again, that I think everyone in today's age needs to start thinking of. And how can you prep your family and your everything, your finances, your ration, everything? How can you prep your family to face hard times? Not because
of an if, but when. And I think you'll get a lot out of that network as well. So James, thanks for having Raising Values on the Prepper Broadcasting Network.
Yeah. And as far as raising values, I mean, I think that this is really going to speak towards like a lot of life situations, a lot of relationship and a lot of marriage issues, a lot of issues around raising children. I mean, I think that over the course of most people's lives, they encounter enough opportunities to break a person or break a relationship, break a family. And I think that raising values has something to not necessarily teach, saying that we are the ultimate authority, but at least to give a person an example and say, this is how we overcame this, or even this is the situation we are wrestling with today. Because one of the things I preach in Matter of Facts podcast when we talk about like survival situations is we talk about wargaming a lot, which is here's a situation, here's a scenario. What do you have? What tools do you have to deal with this problem? And if the answer is I have no tools, then go get tools. And if the answer is, well, I have tools, but I don't have them in the right place for me to be able to use them, go put them in the right place. But it's an opportunity for you to plan ahead for something that is going to happen possibly one day, so that when it does, you already have a plan A, a plan B, a plan C, and you go with it. It's a lot of the things that Gillian and I had to figure out through the course of like postpartum depression, through dealing with illness in ourselves and in our families, dealing with
death. We've dealt with,
yeah.
We've dealt with injury. We've dealt with sickness. We've dealt with surgery and hospital stays and taking care of sick parents, and in which a lot of people have already dealt with those things and they've come out on the other side. And I have always said since, and if you go back to the Matter of Facts podcast and listen to the episode, Walking Through Hell, Marching Through Hell, that was a very near and dear subject to my heart because it talked about my 3-year battle with postpartum depression and anxiety and the trauma that came from a very traumatic birth of Piper and all those things. And it was at that point that I knew I wanted to advocate for women like me that have been through those things and maybe dealing with those things. I can just imagine, not just imagine, I know what a young mom feels like when she feels like her brain is not, and her brain and heart aren't speaking, and they're not her voice. They're not her anymore because of the things that she's going through as a new mom. And so I wanted to make sure that I told my story and gave that hope that you can get through this, and this is how I did it. Maybe those things can help you as well. And that just opened up a whole conversation between me and Phil and Andrew on what else can we talk about that can give hope to other couples and families in this day and age, keeping with traditional and Christian values that could possibly help them. So.
Yeah. And at the same time, you were having that conversation. I know you've had this conversation with a lot of other women to kind of let them know that this potential pitfall is out there waiting for them. I've had the same conversation with young men and told them about as much as I'm comfortable telling them about our experience, because I've tried to explain to a lot of men, and I've actually had some feedback from some men who will be going through the birth of first child in the near future. And I've explained to all of them, like, I can't tell you that this is going to happen. And if it does, I can't tell you it's going to be as bad. There's no telling. It's roll the dice. But I can tell you these are the warning signs. And I can tell you that if you see the signs, the best thing you can do is be positioned and be ready to help this woman get through this. Because through no fault of anybody in our lives, nobody told us this could happen, because nobody in our families had ever dealt with this that I've found out. I mean, there was nobody in our family to tell us, hey, by the way, this could happen. And this could be a 3-year fight for your wife to like be able to reconnect with your child, reconnect with you, be able to be herself again. I had no idea. I'd heard of the baby blues and figured, like, oh, it's a week or two, it'll go away, but it didn't.
3 years later.
Yeah. But I guess that's kind of my point. And that's like one example of like what I hope we tackle on the show is to try to to try to give other couples, other families, and even other people who are single who might be confronting some of these things,
Yeah.
like a window into like these are our beliefs, this is our thought process. There are things we're going to talk about that I'm sure some people in the audience are going to completely disagree with and think, well, Phil and Gillian are old fashioned or they're not thinking straight or whatever. Everybody, all of you who are adults, you make your own decisions, you suffer your own consequences. I'm just saying that, like, I think the two of us have stumbled onto a recipe that works. And it's not our recipe. It's a very old fashioned way of looking at marriage. It's a very old fashioned way of looking at family.
Mm-hmm.
But it works.
Yep. Anyway, we hope you will join us. We can't always promise that it'll be a Monday that we record, but you will get plenty of notice because Phil is going to push me to make that decision on time and day that we will do these lives. And of course, we will always drop the audio a few days later. I think we're going to start dropping audio. This episode will drop Thursday?
Friday.
No, Friday.
So what tiny little bit of administrative work. Matter of Facts is always dropped on our feeds on Friday, and it's gone out on Prepper Broadcasting Network on the following Monday. I think what I'm going to do for the purpose, because I saw one person ask, is this going to be available later in audio? So for those of you who missed this or had to dial out before you got finished, these episodes will stay on Facebook and YouTube pretty much in perpetuity. So if you want to come back and see our faces while we're having these chats, it'll be here wherever you're looking at right now. It should be here pretty much forever. It will go out on the RSS feed, which Gillian should have pinned the links and everything at the very top of the Facebook page.
I haven't, but I will.
Hasn't, but
I'm learning.
Well, but I also have to do a little bit more administrative work and prepare some lists of like the all the feed information is exactly the same as Matter of Fact. So it's not going to be hard for me to post those links where everybody can subscribe to this. If you have your favorite podcast aggregator like Stitcher, Spotify, anything in that vein, you search for Matter of Facts podcast or Raising Values podcast, you should be able to find it. It's on every podcast directory I've been able to get it into, which is a lot of them. And this will run on the same feed as Matter of Fact. So if you're a previous Matter of Facts listener, just sit back and you'll probably be hearing this very quickly. But I'll probably post this first one on Friday. It'll go out right with the Matter of Facts podcast where we announce to the audio only listeners this was happening. And in the future, we'll have to figure out what day we're going to record and what day it's going to post. But Raising Values is going to run in tandem with Matter of Facts. So wherever you've been listening to Matter of Facts podcast, you'll now hear Raising Values podcast as well. And if you're here for Raising Values podcast, I encourage you to also give Matter of Facts a look. It's me and a buddy of mine, occasionally Gillian, and it's a lot more focused around like prepping and survivalism and physical threats that I think bear a lot of discussion, especially given today's world and today's climate. But at the same time, it's a very different kind of look and feel from what we're going to talk about Raising Values, which is going to be how do we emotionally and psychologically keep this family knit together.
Yep, that's it. If there's anything that changes, of course, you'll be aware. But we appreciate you watching. And for the audio listeners, we appreciate you listening. And we will see you on the next show. Bye.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.